Hello, everybody. All right. It is Friday. We are doing it live today. We got some stuff to talk about because our market is a little wonky. I think it has been for a little while, but everybody keeps talking about our inventory going up. And there's something that people aren't really talking about, and that's what's going on with some of the sellers. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to add in maybe some stuff about what's going on with Jerome Powell. If you have been watching today, there's some news has come out about him. So to do all that, I thought it would be very fitting to have your friend and mine, Matt Ledoux, back with me. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Shawn. How are you?
Good. You're so great doing this because I know you are not in town.
I am, so hopefully my Wi-Fi connection holds up.
Yeah.
I'm in a little remote part of North Carolina, on rural North Carolina, but I think we're good.
It's good. It's good. It almost feels as if you're like sitting in a closet or something like that, but I don't think you are.
I know it might feel that way, and it's
But your lighting's good.
It's like a 1980s light that I had to dim, and then exactly. But and the kitchen table, and I kicked my son off of his Xbox so he didn't take up my bandwidth.
Right. So. I know you can't play anything right now.
I know. I'm like, you're done. Yeah. Exactly.
Very important.
So we're good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was talking with Tina earlier this week, and I think it's really interesting. I'm going to bring up the Cromford report here just a second, because I usually like to start off with what's going on with our Cromford market index and show that chart with all the cities. And I thought it was I thought it was very, very interesting. So here it is. This is even more. So this shows Paradise Valley jumping positively 33%. Now let me just scroll down here just a minute. This was last week. This was 25%.
Right.
So
it's such that we're two different markets, right?
Yeah.
Two
crazy
different markets.
Crazy. And one of the things that this talks about, I'm going to scroll down here, is this says another week in which the market got less favorable for sellers, but is trending. The trend is weakening. The average monthly change in CMI, that's the Cromford Market Index, is negative 1.7%, which is less negative than negative 2.7% last week. One city has joined Paradise Valley in improving for sellers over the last month. Cave Creek, which has slipped back into balanced market, having briefly become a buyer's market. Paradise Valley is on the strong upward trend with positive 25%. But in all of this, right, the conversation then led to why? Why is Paradise Valley jumping so much, so drastically in a market that we all know is a buyer's market? Not going to sugarcoat it. It's a buyer's market. And I'm going to show you something, or we're going to talk about something. I always like to show this because if you talk to some agents that don't understand the Cromford report, or, our Cromford report, or they don't have it in their market, because I know some of you might be watching from other places, which, by the way, let me know where you're watching from. We like to say hi and know where you're watching. But a lot of times in other markets, agents will say to you, if the inventory is more than 6 months, we have more than 6 months inventory on the market at one time, then it's a buyer's market. If it's less than 6 months on the market, then it's a seller's market. And I want to show you something using the Cromford report that shows you how inaccurate that is. There's so much more to look at. Summer solstice, I love that. From California. Where in California? Welcome. Thank you for watching. And then Omega Royale from far, far away. Are you in a galaxy far, far away?
Everyone's got great pictures with her.
I know. I love it. So with that, let me jump back over and I'm going to share. Sorry, let me put this back up. I'm going to share in the Cromford report. Oh, McLean. Let's see. Oh, McLean, Virginia. Thank you for watching. And Newport Beach. So I grew up in Riverside and used to go to Newport Beach every summer. Love it there. It's a great place. Okay. So I'm going to jump back over to the Cromford report here, and sorry, you guys are going to have to watch me jump, and we'll get to, you know what? Actually, I'm going to jump back over here. I'm going to share this instead because this is kind of what we were going to talk about. So in our market that we just talked about, it definitely is a buyer's market. And sellers right now, they're not loving it. I think that it's taken them a long time to kind of come to terms with it. But the reality is that what this title says, home sellers have gotten tired of cutting prices, so they're yanking their homes off the market. And that is the number one reason why Paradise Valley has shot up so much. They've had a lot of inventory come off the market. Now, they've had a couple sales too, and they were like, I think 25 or 30 million, something like that. However, it's the fact that they have had less inventory now on the market. And because the Cromford Market Index looks at supply and demand, as well as how quickly things are moving through the market. So if there's less supply, it's going to spike that Cromford Market Index. However, the reality is, and I see it in our market, I don't know if you've seen it, Matt, with some of the stuff that you're dealing with, but sellers they're struggling in that, they bought the house maybe even 5-10 years ago. They've got a ton of equity in the house, but they still are feeling like their house is worth a certain number.
It's really interesting because if you even, think back to the housing crash, right? A lot of luxury, those people could afford to weather the storm. Right. And these people that, I'm not gonna call them greedy, whatever. These people that want to break the Paradise Valley record for their home, and the fact they can't get that right now, and they can afford to wait it out, because their stock portfolio, their Bitcoin, whatever is doing well. They're just simply yanking it off. I have friends that he has just sold his company, and he was trying to pay cash for a PV home this month, and it was at 2.3 million, and the appraisal came in almost 10% light.
Wow.
Which
that's huge.
You just don't hear about that, right?
No.
Like that's just crazy. Now the appraisers aren't marking like the negative box that prices are going down, but I think it's a matter of, like you said, just that factor of they're not going to get exactly what they want, so they're just going to take their ball and go home.
Well, yeah, because we've got some sellers again that it's not a necessity that they move.
Right.
It's more of a, like, I'd like to move, so I'm going to put my house on the market, but if I'm not going to get my price, then I'll just take it off the market. Greg, that from McLean, Virginia, that, said where he's watching from, kind of happened because he bought a house here. Sorry, Greg. And it was off the market. But I called and said, hey, will they still sell? And they would. And so, you have to kind of know that, especially in the luxury market, that sometimes, well, I would say a lot of times at these houses, if they come off the market, you have to either figure out how to get in touch with the owner, or you got to call the agent. Because I will tell you, a lot of these agents that work in the luxury market, we know to keep a listing agreement in place, because crazier things have happened. I've sold a lot of homes off the market that in the summertime, because that luxury market, a lot of times they will come off the market in the summertime. So I thought, you know what? I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to be traveling. I don't want to have to worry about negotiating a deal when I'm on vacation or whatever that looks like, even if it's a second home. And they just take it off the market. But I think that there's some other sellers right now that are seeing their homes not get what they want, and they've maybe done a few price reductions, and they start thinking to themselves, you know what? I think I'm just going to sit and I'm just going to wait. I can stay in the home for now. I have a great interest rate. Don't have to sell, want to sell. But I'm just going to wait it out. So Derek Hudson, we're looking at a home in Greyhawk. Oh, we were looking at a home in Greyhawk a week or so ago. There were several that had dropped $75,000 in price over the last 3 months. They're still fairly pricey, but there aren't bidding wars. No, 100%. There really aren't bidding wars anymore. And that's the thing. I have had some people come in from out of town, and they're asking, like, how much higher over the list price am I going to have to offer? And I'm like, we're past that. We're not doing that anymore.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, now it's a matter of, how much can we negotiate off of the price? And I'll be honest with you, there's some sellers that just really aren't being realistic. I have one, Matt and I, we made an offer on a house. All the comps are pointing to what the price was that we made the offer. In fact, my clients even said, you know what, Shawn, I got to be honest. If we get the house at this price, I don't feel like I'm getting a great deal. I feel like I'm getting an okay price. but not a great deal. And it's grossly overpriced, and the seller will almost not budge. And so I told my clients from the beginning, I said, this is probably a long play, but let's see what happens. And they're not going to do anything. So, I mean, we're just sitting and we're just watching and waiting. And, you know, sometimes that's just what you have to do. But
right,
what I see in those situations sometimes, sorry, Matt, what I see in those situations sometimes is that the seller, because it's an investor, if they really have to get that price, what they will end up doing is they'll end up turning it into a rental, or they'll try to.
Yeah. And my advice is, when that Greyhawk deal is like, you know, is just, it's a contact sport. You're gonna, there could easily be that motivated seller that has built something else, bought something else, you know, like you just don't know until you go, you just got to get in there.
Yeah.
Because there are deals to be had, and we can both attest to that right now.
Right. So let's see what this article has to say. So it says delistings are growing faster than the number of homes for sale. Realtor.com says, indicating frustration among sellers. Oh gosh, of course it's going to paywall me right now. Anyway, well,
Market Watch.
I think I'm okay, but I don't want to make you guys go through me. I won't make you go through me signing in or doing whatever. That's the reality. In fact, here I'll pull up. I'm going to pull up the Cromford report, and we can see what it looks like for cancels. The other thing that I want to show you is, sorry, here.
Oh, sorry, I got paywall too.
No, I know. I just got it. I just got it. Here, hold on. I'll pull it back up. I got it. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. Home sellers are in some of the nation's most sluggish housing markets are tired of cutting price. So they're yanking their listing off the market amid a multi-decade slowing in the housing market. Home sellers in some areas are giving up, facing sluggish demand from would-be buyers. These owners are choosing to remove their homes from the market and wait it out instead. In May, there were relatively elevated shares of delisted homes in the metro areas, including Miami, Fort Worth, West Palm Beach, Florida, Phoenix, Mesa, Chandler in Arizona, and Houston, Pasadena, the Woodlands in Texas, according to a new analysis by Realtor.com. Sorry. The increase in delistings is an early signal that sellers may be losing patience in a market that is taking longer to deliver desired offers, the report said. The shares of houses that were taken off the market in May grew faster than the increase in the number of houses that were put up for sale, according to the report. In other words, more homeowners were delisting a home than listing one, the data showed. And I saw that in May. I don't know if you noticed that. I saw it in May, where I just felt a slowdown in the number of homes coming on the market. And I noticed that there were some homes that were on the market that all of a sudden would pop. Like, as far as, like, when I say pop, I mean, they got an offer and went under contract. They'd been on the market for maybe 60 days. They had done a few price reductions, and then they would sell. And we weren't really getting a replenishing of a lot of new listings. Between last May and this May, delistings rose 47%, while active listing growth increased by about 32%. Delistings are also becoming slightly more common. They made up about 3.2% of all active listings last May, but are now about 4.1%. The shift in sentiment among sellers comes as the housing market flips from a seller-friendly market to a buyer-friendly market. In years past, inventory was scarce, while now there's oversupply in some markets. The housing market is oversupplied in Arizona, Florida, and Texas. It says that oversupply is partly due to builders adding newly constructed homes to the market. In many cities in Arizona, Florida, and Texas, for sale listings have surged largely due to these newly built homes. Now, we did see a surge in this. But it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, right. I mean, you can look at the same page of what you just had pulled up for the Cromford report, and you can see in June there were 6,621 closed transactions.
Yeah.
20.8% of those, I did the math, were new construction.
Yeah.
So again, where's the new construction for Phoenix? It's not in the interior. It's on the, it's on the outside, right? It's your
it's in
rural
Buckeye,
areas. It's your
Queen Creek.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Your
Surprise,
Peoria.
all of those.
So I don't think that's a really accurate thing to say. It's not, new construction is not, impacting Scottsdale.
No.
It's not impacting Tempe. It's not impacting Gilbert, right? Like those areas are pretty well. You have small infill projects, right? But nothing substantial.
Right. So Summer Solstice says, I keep seeing houses on Zillow that sold in 2022 as new builds for 600,000. Seller is asking 900 plus now. Basic options and maybe a pool. Have you negotiated houses like this for a reasonable price, or do they just take them off the market? Well, my first question would be, what do you feel is a reasonable price? Because from 2022 to now, there still is appreciation in the market. So we're not below 2022 pricing. So
depending on where, right?
It does. You're right. But that's the big thing. And again,
Scottsdale was like 4% or something like that.
Yeah. Sometimes I look at this too and I go, okay, so the new build sold for 600 back in 2022. Our market was still pretty hot. Was that at the beginning of the development, or was it towards the end? Because in the beginning, the people probably got a deal.
Yeah, and did it take a year and a half to construct?
Right.
Was it? I mean, because if you locked in, even 21 was probably the tail end of like the real boom. Because remember, the pandemic was 20,
right,
where people were really locking in great prices on new construction.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a huge appreciation. You're not wrong, Summer. You're not.
No, that's crazy. And then, some people on the outskirts had to seriously overpay.
Yeah.
Sadly, I have a young couple right now that their townhome in Glendale is roughly what they paid for it 3 years ago.
2 years ago?
3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
3 years ago. Now, again, they overpaid, and maybe it's worth, 10 grand more than what they paid, but it's nominal when you factor in the cost of selling, and they need proceeds to buy the new place. It's not going to happen.
Right. So yeah, Summer says, I would say 750 at most, maybe 800. I'm not disagreeing with you at all by any means. I would say that there's a few things though you have to look at when it comes to new construction as well. Right. Because did they pay 600 and get delivered something without a backyard? Did they then put in a pool and all their landscaping, because that's expensive? Did they then do some other updates in the house? Because again, when you buy a new build, you're not getting any window coverings. You're not getting any, you're not getting a lot of those things. So did they add that? I mean, do window coverings cost $100,000? No. Well, some houses they can, but I mean,
you pay a premium. You pay
right.
a premium for that. Like a lot of people that I would know, they would say, you know what, I'm going to put in my own windows. I'm going to put in my own floors.
And the thing is, like with window coverings and things like that, there are some builders out there right now, especially, they're saying, hey, as an incentive, we'll offer you window coverings because they want to sell some of these houses.
Right. Right.
Derek says there'd better be some amazing updates for that big of a price increase. Land in certain areas is worth a lot, but people shouldn't be paying $900 to live way out in places like Queen Creek. I got new. They are.
I know. Look, it's crazy to us that we've been doing this for a minute. So yeah, if you had told us, either one of us 15 years ago, by the way, houses in Queen Creek are going Santan, going for $1 million. I
sold a house a couple years ago out in Santan Valley. It was on a little over an acre, and they paid more than $9 million for it. A beautiful house, house, but more custom too. But right. Not like a builder home. I mean, but that was the price.
Well, yeah, and the infrastructure is going in now. During the crash, it was not there. Everything came to a grinding halt. There was one way in, one way out. It's changed a lot. Yeah.
So Summer says, that's what I wanted to know. If you've negotiated deals where you've made the seller wake up to their overprice. Have I negotiated deals that that have gotten significant price reductions for the buyer? Yes. Does it happen every time? No. Can I make them do it? No. I mean, the sellers have to kind of lean into it, but at the same time, my job in presenting an offer when it's low like that is to support my offer with everything that I have, and I will. Unfortunately, sometimes the seller's agent, if they have suggested that price, will sometimes not include those items that I've sent justifying my price because they're kind of trying to save face a little.
Sure. And you deliver it in a professional manner. I mean,
for sure.
We're not trying to be adversarial here.
Not
just
at
simply
all.
saying, like, it sounded like you had a really pleasant conversation, that example from the other day. And they're like, listen, this is the data that I'm finding. If you have something different, like, send it to me. Like,
right.
there's actually a rationale for this offer.
Yeah. I've seen basic options and way overpriced and no pool. Yeah. And here's the thing. It sounds to me like what you're seeing, Summer, is stuff that's out there right now where sellers are just kind of on a wing and a prayer, hoping to get 900,000, and the house is just going to sit there. And if they start doing small little price reductions, it's what I call the price reduction of death, that death spiral. They just make tiny little price reductions and they just keep spiraling down, and they're chasing the price down rather than going to that price so that they can get it sold more quickly. And that, I will tell you, is the hardest thing to tell a seller when you're sitting there telling them, I know you want X for the house, but I'm here to tell you this is the data. This is not my opinion. This is literally what the data is showing me, what your home is worth. This is what I would suggest that you price the home. And here's the reason. And really, if they go, well, I want to try this high price. I go, I understand the reasoning, that like the thought process behind it, but let me tell you why that doesn't work. Buyers they don't want to see it. They'll go see the house. They will, and you'll get a lot of showings, and it'll get really inconvenient for you. A lot. However, you're not going to get an offer. And if you do, it's going to be an offer you don't love and it's probably going to be an offer where I told you to list the house. Because buyers want to deal with sellers they feel are reasonable and realistic. They don't want to deal with sellers that they feel are not those things. And oftentimes sellers will say, well, if a buyer really likes my house, then they can just make an offer. Buyers, unfortunately, don't work like that because they don't want to offend.
Right. It's tough to try to gently deliver that message sometimes.
It is. Yeah. Seems like the buyer's market is going to be a lot of work to get a reasonable price. Sometimes it is, not always. But buyers also have to be realistic in what a reasonable price is, because what you think maybe should be selling for 600, maybe, like you had said, maybe should be like 750 or 8, not 9. But it's finding that happy medium somewhere. But again, the buyer's idea, and this is my opinion about this right now. I feel like we were in a seller's market, and the hottest seller's market that I have ever seen in my 26 years of doing this. Absolutely the hottest seller's market I've ever seen. We were in that for so long that I feel like now buyers are like, yes, I can finally stick it to the sellers like I was, I wanted to before. And sellers are kind of like, hold on. We're not totally desperate. We don't have to sell this. So this is not a fire sale. We are not going into foreclosure if we don't sell this. So I think people are being a little bit more cautious, and there is a tough push-pull between buyers and sellers. Yeah. Derek says, especially when you show them homes that are nicer than theirs, that are selling for less in a similar area. Got to tell people your house in Buckeye isn't Desert Islands. You're not wrong.
Listen, it's all to each his own. I helped a lady on her investment property. She lives in Buckeye, and she thinks it is paradise on earth, and there's nowhere else you'd rather live. So,
and that's great.
It depends where it depends what you like.
Yeah, Summer, it's property work. It's hard. I'm not gonna lie. It's difficult right now because you have to be realistic on both sides, and unfortunately, right now, both sides aren't always realistic. I mean, thank goodness a lot of them are. But some of them aren't on either side, buyers or sellers. what the home should look like, what the home, when you're buying it, like, and you're buying a resale home, but there's things that are, that need fixing and things like that. And the seller's like, no, I'm not fixing that. And the buyer kind of stands firm and says, well, I'm not buying it. And it's that whole thing like, well, you're not buying a brand new house. Like there are going to be things that need to be repaired. Now, right. Should the seller fix some things that need to be repaired because it's safety and, that kind of stuff? I think they should, personally.
Agreed.
Yeah. But
and sometimes they will. Sometimes they will. And,
a lot of times they will.
The more you can know up front, the better. So you're not wasting your time with appraisal and inspections and asking the questions, right?
Right. Okay. So I'm going to jump back over to the Cromford report, only because I want to show you, because it's talking about canceled listings, right? I'm going to show you where we are here in Arizona. These are canceled per week. This dark green line here is 2024. The light green line is 2025. So you can see we are a lot higher. And this is per week. How many listings have canceled? 568. I mean, this is a lot of canceled listings. Now, back in 2020, this was 2022, 588.
Wow.
For one, and then it dropped. I mean, and I can't remember what was happening right then.
When was that? That was the end of 2022?
It was in 2022. Yeah, at the end, week 40.
Well, in the fourth quarter, we saw rates really jump where we were over 7. We were like 7.25%.
Yeah, then that's
7.375. So that would that essentially shut everything down.
Yeah, that's why.
I remember having a lot of free time on my hands fourth quarter of 2022.
So not only do we see a lot of canceled, but we also have got a lot of expireds. So this gray line is 2025. So what this says for expireds, right? This is telling us that homes that the listing agreement has run its course, they're not putting the house back on the market. They're like, you know what? It didn't sell. I'm just gonna hold off for now. And maybe some of it could be seasonal. I don't know that it all is. But I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot that haven't relisted. And I'm sorry to all those people that are getting 1,000,001 phone calls for, I have a buyer for you. And even though they didn't win, your house was on the market. I'm sorry for all those people that are getting those phone calls. It makes me bananas.
Crazy.
Absolutely makes me bananas.
And they're AI.
I know. So I just think that it's something that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. That's why I wanted to talk about it. I just keep hearing how much the inventory is increasing. Like, oh my gosh, we've got, all this inventory that's come on the market. And the reality is not that.
No, it's opportunity. I mean, for sure, it's opportunity. Like
it is.
Someone says no, there's a yes around the corner.
Right.
For a lot of people.
So here is another chart. I just love showing these charts because it's just a visual thing that you can really see. So this is active listings. And you can see this is 2025. So this was the beginning of the year. And we were absolutely climbing in inventory. 100% we were climbing. And then we hit a flat part and we've started to decline. Again, kind of went flat a little bit. But in the last 2 weeks, the number of listings that have come on the market have gone down. And this is not necessarily, I mean, this is crazy. This right here, by the way, we were talking about earlier of new homes coming on the market. This was all of the new construction people putting it into MLS.
Oh.
That was that spike right there.
Yeah, I was going to ask if maybe that's a little bit seasonal for the last couple of weeks, but I mean,
I don't think it is.
I don't know. I don't think it is.
We just don't. I mean, unfortunately, this chart only goes back to 2021. And so here's 2021. And I mean, this is not, to me, a seasonal or a cyclical trend. This was one of the other things that I thought was really interesting. When we go into the contract ratio, which again, this is how this is not adjusted seasonally, where the Cromford Market Index is adjusted seasonally. So it moves a lot more slowly. This moves really fast. And right now our contract ratio is at 29. Oh, sorry. Are you seeing this chart? Yeah. Okay, good. We're at 29.7. But if you look at the number of homes we have under contract, which is about 6,600, almost 6,700, and the active listings are 2,241. I'm going to go back. I think it was all the way back here.
And this is Maricopa and parts of Pinal, right?
Correct.
This is the whole Cromford
and deal. Part of yeah. Let me take Yavapai out. I didn't realize that she started adding Yavapai in there.
Oh.
But this is back in 2015. This is where this is what Tina always talks about. This is where it gets interesting. So if you look the contract ratio, meaning that it's more weighted, the higher the contract ratio is, the more weighted it is towards the sellers. Not necessarily that it's in a seller's market, but you can see we're almost at the same active count at 22,000, and almost at the same under contract at 69,000. We just had a few more homes that were going under contract, so it pulled that contract ratio up just a little bit. But I mean, we're not that far off. And again, 2015 was, it was technically a seller's market. This was the other one. So the month supply, this is what we were talking about just a little bit earlier with how many months do we have on the market. So we have 3.7 months inventory on the market. If you were talking to somebody in another market, they would say, oh, then you're in a seller's market. We are not in a seller's market. So there's just so much more information that you have to gather to really know whether or not we're in a seller's market or not, because we're not. Derek, but buyers aren't dumb. Even if homes are delisted, there's a record of that. Agreed. Even if they list it again later, buyers will still use a previous delisting as a negotiating tactic. 100%. 100%. In fact, when I see that, we have a history tab, and then you go into the history tab and you can see what did they list it for before, and it goes into all the syndicated things now too. So you guys can see what they listed for. I've seen people do crazy things. They've taken it off the market for a little while, and then next thing you know, they put it back on the market 3 months later, thinking, oh, it's reset the days on market. Oh, but don't forget, we can still see what you listed it for before. So you're right. And buyers aren't dumb at all.
Nope.
You can see it.
They're not.
And so again, to a buyer as an agent, I would have to justify to a buyer that I was working with why it was worth that much more. And in some cases, in some markets, it would be the truth, but not right now. Not right now. So it's interesting. Because again, this is not some of the stuff that people are talking about. They're all talking about how much inventory we have coming on the market, and we really don't. Okay, let's talk about, we're shifting. I know this is a little, but this came today. So sorry but I think it's important to talk about with Jerome Powell. So I'm going to let Matt kind of.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think there's something like app pinging or my.
It's my.
Okay, I thought it was me. Yeah. I thought it was me.
No,
okay, correct.
It's mine. Sorry.
So yeah, nothing has been confirmed by the most important person in this conversation, and that is in fact Jerome Powell. I think I was kind of checking my Twitter and X, to see if he's even going to take the time to respond, being that it's Friday night. He may not. But this whole thing started because the director of the FHFA, William Pulte, if you recognize that name, Pulte as in Pulte Homes,
right?
He runs our FHA now, and he posted a statement saying he's under the impression that Jerome Powell is set to resign. So obviously, if that happens, that is potentially very big news for us, because Trump has been adamant that Powell has been asleep behind the wheel. He's looking, in the rearview mirror, not really looking up what's ahead, and that we should be cutting rates right now. And Christopher Waller, who is one of the Fed governors, has been the most outspoken, saying that we are in a very restrictive policy. And ironically, he is perhaps the favorite to be the new Fed chairman. So if he is the new Fed chairman and he is able to convince, now remember, it's not one person that sets our fiscal policy. It's 12 people that vote, and I believe 7 of which are Fed governors. But basically what happens is the chairman, who in this case right now is Powell, makes a recommendation, and then they vote on it. And you say in terms of no way that's happening of him resigning, I don't know.
I know.
It's really interesting.
It just came out today, didn't it?
It just came out today. And it appears what they're attempting to do is saying that he lied to Congress on some items that's surrounding the renovations to his new building, which is apparently running way over budget. It's like $2.5 billion. So I don't know the true story behind it. I know there's a lot of pressure on Powell to resign. So if he was to resign, if he does, and if Waller is appointed, and if Waller can convince some others to see it his way, because they don't make the votes public. They only if a Fed governor says something is there a record of any dissension. All you hear is the verdicts. They meet 8 times a year, and it's just, hey, we decided to keep it the same. Hey, we decided to raise it. Hey, we decided to cut it. That's it. So they like to have a unanimous decision. I have a feeling that it will likely not be a unanimous decision, but if
I don't know how it can be.
Yeah, if he gets people on board, who knows? If we see a 50 rate cut, if we see a step away from quantitative tightening and more quantitative easing, that would likely bode well for mortgage rates.
Well, and so
because
sorry, I'm going to go back to Summer's comment. Oh, please let that happen. So just realize like what that means. Again, if he starts cutting that rate, it does not immediately mean that the mortgage interest rates are going to start dropping.
Correct.
We've got to start seeing that 10-year treasury come down before the mortgage interest rate starts to move.
Right. And typically we will see a correlation between the 10-year treasury and 30-year mortgage rates.
Yeah.
So coming from a guy that's been doing this for 21, 22 years, I am just absolutely in shock that it's been 3 years since rates went over 5. It was basically like June of 22, and we all thought rates would have dropped by now, and for a multitude of reasons, they have not. So believe me when I say I'm a skeptic when it comes to low rates. I just kind of go the mindset that rates are going to be in the high 6s forever, and I'll be pleasantly surprised. But if this happens, it could happen in a hurry. So people that are potentially, especially on that lower end of the market, that are sitting on the sideline right now, if those rates were to hit 6, we already know from the past that's the magic number. We will see applications skyrocket for purchases and even refinances if we see rates drop to 6%.
Well, and what we know historically, again, is that when we get to about 6.5%, everything speeds up here. Everything picks up. People start to feel better about getting into the market. I feel like we got really close at that 6.7%, which was just the last couple weeks. I mean, I think there was an increase in mortgage applications. It wasn't crazy, but we did see an increase.
We did. We'd locked some folks in at 6.75 on certain loan programs with good credit scores and all that stuff. But like that April 3rd day was massive, right? April 3rd, boom, we had low rates for like a day and a half.
Right.
So a lot of times these interest rate drops are very temporary. And you know, as a mortgage professional, I need to literally be on guard and ready to lock in at a moment's notice because sometimes these windows are very small.
Yeah. So Derek, I hear you. If ifs and buts were candies and nuts, it would be Christmas every day. I don't disagree. I mean, there's no question. EHS Is it better to reduce home price or ask for a 6% seller concession? Well, if you're going to, you got to look at comps first and see where the price is, because that to me determines where the home price should be. And then you have to strategically kind of enter into that seller concession piece. Because if you're going to ask for that, you have to understand that that's part of their proceeds. So you can't go in and ask for a super, super low price and a seller concession on top of it and expect, again, unless I'll say this for me, unless I've talked to the agent already and kind of know that I can get it.
Yeah. And really, I would say it depends on you and your situation and what's most important to you. I would say that for most people, and let's just use really easy math. Let's just say the question is, do we want to pay $500,000 for a house and get 6% concessions, right? Which in that case would be $30,000, which by the way, you can only do that in an FHA loan if you're putting only a little bit down. But let's say you want that house you want it for $470,000 and not get concessions, or $500,000 with the concessions. For most people, I would say concessions, because if you're talking about borrowing a difference of $30,000, you might only be talking about a couple $100 difference in monthly payment, or taking those concessions and paying your closing cost, paying a substantial buy down, a 2-1 buy down, something of that nature, where instead of saving $200 a month, maybe in that first year you're saving $500 a month or something like that. Because really in the grand scheme, people are always shocked when they say, what if I put an extra 10 grand down, right? And I'll say, what's it do? And I'll say, well, it changes your payment by whatever, $62 a month or something. People are always amazed because a 30-year amortization is a long time. So, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 in the grand scheme, as far as money borrowed up front, does not equate to a massive difference in payment. When I show people that math, they almost always grasp the concept of, the house is worth $500,000. I'll just tell them we're paying the $500,000, but I want the 3%. I want of the 3%, 2.3% is going to cover my 2-1 buy down. My interest rate's going to be 4.75 year one, 5.75 year two. And if I was to refinance inside that 2-year period, the way those buy downs work is that money just sits in a subsidy account. So it's mine. So if we refinance, we're just going to reduce the payoff by what's left over in there.
And that it kind of goes back to what I always tell buyers when they come to me and they say, when I say, have you talked to a lender? They say, no, but I think that, this is the price point that I'm comfortable buying, which tells me that they've probably gone to like a mortgage calculator to figure that out, which is fine. That's a great first start. But I always tell them, like, I would talk to a lender, and here's why. You might talk to them and your financial situation might be a little different than you think. And you might be able to afford more, not saying that you have to pay or that you need to spend more. But what I always tell them is, like, you need to find out what does that loan amount equal in a mortgage payment? Because really what you're buying is you're buying your payment.
Yeah.
It's like, don't let the total amount of what that loan is scare you. It's really, what is the payment? And if you're locked in for 30 years, especially now, if you're locked in for 30 years and you can do it, know that the interest rates are going to come down at some point. Are they going to come down this year, next year? Who knows? But when they do come down, you can refinance. It resets it. So now you have a new 30-year mortgage, right? But your payment's going to come down as well.
And for most people, most people are not going to live at a home for 30 years.
No.
They're going to live in a home for 7. So people are so fixated of, oh my gosh, this is how much I'm going to pay in interest over 30 years. Like, okay, but how long are you going to live there? Right. At the end of the day, you're using a mortgage as a tool to accumulate wealth. You want a good payment and you want to build equity, because you're going to take that equity at some point, likely in the next 7.5 years, and apply that toward the next place.
Right.
But yes, again, it's been 3 years. This might be the thing that finally gets us there on low rates. We'll see.
I know. It's interesting. I feel like, again, we've got it right here. You've got one person in here that says, please let it happen. And the other one's like, it's not going to happen. History has said that, yeah, what did you say? No history of that happening in the history of the Fed. And again, I don't disagree.
So, the reality is there is a history of Powell being wrong. He called inflation transitory. Again, they were looking at what was happening today instead of what was ahead. So by them not recognizing inflation was a real problem, we got into this mess where rates went over 7%, right? So it is important that we do have leadership that is aware of, both sides, right? What's happened in the past? What's our data? We can look at those reports. We were talking earlier about the PCE, which is an inflation report that the Fed looks at heavily. We're in great shape. We're at 2.3%. The Fed's goal is 2%, which may not even be realistic anymore, right? Unemployment has been good according to the BLS jobs numbers, but we know also is that we've seen significant reductions over time when they look at these reports again, because if you look at ADP, it's telling a completely different story than what the BLS job did this last month. The BLS job we just had is the reason that Powell is able to say no, and the rest of the Fed governors said no, we're not going to lower rates in July because we had a good BLS jobs report, but the ADP report continues to bomb.
Yeah. Sorry that I jumped around there. I want to show something here in just a second. But Derek says, look up the name Arthur Burns for some Fed history of chairs bending to political pressure and what happened as a result. I will. I don't know anything about it.
I think if I forget what it's called. Someone was telling me about a book that also talks about like how the Fed was formed and stuff. There's a lot of really interesting history. And you know what? I don't disagree in the fact that there needs to be sectors of government, there needs to be a separation of church and state, right? Where it should not be political. I think there's enough people now, even I was reading about, even Elizabeth Warren has been a staunch critic of Jerome Powell, telling him he's not doing enough to regulate, telling him that he should be cutting rates. So there are people on both sides that don't really believe he is doing a great job right now. So we'll see if the pressure works.
Everybody keeps talking about, the only way that he's going to change rates is if we start seeing unemployment.
Well, and the most interesting thing about it that no one can defend him on is he's always talking about current data to make his decisions. But his testimony was he is concerned about what could happen because of tariffs. So he's making a decision based upon something he doesn't know anything about. And remember, in all fairness, he is not a trained economist, okay? Christopher Waller, by the way, is a trained economist. So he's making a decision based on something that he's worried could happen, when all his decisions since he was appointed have never been on, we project this, we project that. It's always been based on, here's our current data.
Yeah.
Which is a problem.
Well, again, based on what he keeps saying, like if we see unemployment spike, that's when he'll lower rates for sure. But here's something, again, this is from your friend and mine, Tina, in a PowerPoint that she's done. And this basically shows the overall wage growth tracker, right? So this shows that wages have gone up. And sorry, I know I was talking about unemployment, and I'll get there. Wage growth nationally is up 4.3%. And then in Arizona, our wages are up 9.3% year over year in March. Inflation in the US is 2.4%. In Arizona, in Phoenix, it's 0.3%.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I was just looking. Yeah, here's the unemployment. So seasonally adjusted unemployment rate in the United States, it's 4.2, and in Arizona, it's 4.1. So as far as Arizona is concerned, when it comes to some of this stuff, we're looking pretty good economically, jobs wise. I mean, and that's the one thing that I tell people all the time when we start talking about, how can people afford to live here and the whole thing. The number of high paying jobs that have come here over the last, 5, 7, 10, even maybe 10 years is huge. I mean, our whole employment landscape changed drastically since the market crashed back in 2007, 2008.
I would venture to guess that we have radically changed the landscape of our employment diversity, probably more so than any major metropolitan city in the United States.
I would agree.
Because we were a one-trick pony, right? We were a one-trick pony. We were small business. We were construction. We were tourism.
Exactly. Tourism. Yeah. And low-end call center jobs. That was the other thing that we had.
Right. So all of that, you could put all that, into the cauldron. I mean, you've got yourself a great place probably to invest in real estate long-term.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things. And again, you have to look at when you start talking about back to what we were talking about earlier, like all of these brand new constructions that sold for 600,000 now selling for 900,000. Again, I'm not debating that that's a gross. I mean, that's a massive increase, right, in a short amount of time. But inside, in the city, right, in the metro. I mean, yes, that's part of the metro area as well, which our metro area is massive. But inside Scottsdale, Phoenix, Glendale, Tempe, Mesa, Gilbert, Chandler, all those areas that are closer in, we don't have any more land. So they're having to go to the outside. I said this a while ago when looking at a map of the Phoenix metro area, and I looked to see how close Wickenburg actually was. I'm like, Wickenburg is going to be part of the Phoenix metro area before we know it. And now, I mean, we are like butting right up against them.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And with where it's located, with where it's located with TSMC, I'm going to say that some of those people in the manufacturing jobs, they could live in Wickenburg and drive in because they
may have to.
Agreed. So Derek says, if you lower rates now, and then if tariffs have a big impact on inflation and inflation goes crazy, they'll just have to raise rates again. And we're right back where we started. They have to see the data first. I agree. I mean, I don't think that this should be anything that anybody makes a knee-jerk reaction to. I think that things have to be looked at and analyzed appropriately, for sure.
I mean, yeah, it is a concern. Again, no one knows for sure. I mean, Powell doesn't know. Trump doesn't. Nobody knows. I've tried to read as much as I can. I would say more articles than not, they believe the impact to the consumer is not going to be significant.
My big thing about it is that what Powell always said is that he wants to get to 2%. Our goal is to get to 2%. Well, we hit 2% and he didn't lower the rates. I mean, now granted it was short.
Yeah, these employment numbers, I mean, again, they have nowhere to go but up. I mean, we're not going to go below 4. It's just not going to happen. And if you think about remember government jobs, and I mean, that's part of that. You have people that have been let go that are still getting a check, right? That are still showing technically as employed. Yeah. So, I mean, there has been, what's it called? The, is it called the Challenger? What is it? Well, there's a report where large companies have to make announcements if they're going to do a reduction of workforce by a certain amount. And there have been some significant companies that have announced that I think it's within a 6-month period of time or something like that. There are job cuts coming.
Well, and I know here in Arizona, Intel has made a few of those announcements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think Amazon has some of the, your big blue chip companies. There are, it's going to go up. I mean, 4.5 in the grand scheme is not a horrific number, but it's enough to basically not use that as an excuse not to cut rates.
Mm-hmm.
And again, and it's not like they have a long way to go. Trump wants a 300 basis point cut. I think the market could probably withstand 100 basis point cut.
Mm-hmm.
It probably can. And if you look at what the rest of the globe is doing, We are definitely being a lot, more pessimistic than most countries.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because the market has withstood a lot that has gone on recently. And a lot of people, I feel like they've said, this is it, this is the end. And then something happens and we're okay. Again, I mean, I'm not an economist. I am not a political analyst. I am none of those things. So, but I do try to pay attention because it's important, not just for myself, but because I know my clients ask me questions about stuff, especially when it comes to real estate, right? So I do try to pay attention to all of that, but it's hard to know the answer because the question that I get is when are the rates going to come down? And that's the question that I don't think anybody can answer.
Nobody knows. Again, like I'm waking up today and going, "Oh my gosh, what's going on?" Like, we just don't know. There's so many things that could happen.
Well, I was surprised. Again, what was it? 2 weeks ago that the rates were at like 6.7. I was surprised at that.
Yeah.
They didn't stay there. They stayed there for like 2 days, 3 days.
It's kind of quiet. We just kind of started, like it was around June 18th. We just kind of started quietly improving. We didn't have any monster days. It just was a gradual improvement. Now we've lost a little bit the last couple of days, but I mean, again, we could very easily see some improvement next week. I am a little worried about this inflation report on Tuesday because we also have to remember is all you're doing each month is getting a 1 month look back. So whatever that number is, it's just replacing the number from 12 months ago. Right. So we're at a period right now where we already have inflation low. So the numbers we're replacing are also fairly low.
Right.
So it's possible, like last month, inflation goes up 1/10 of a point. People are like, "Oh my God, inflation's crazy." No, it's just this last month was low, but so is the 12 months before. Like we're staying at a low number. I don't think these inflation reports, these CPI reports are super worrisome anymore.
Right. Well, it doesn't seem to, because there's been no big drastic moves when they announce them.
Mm-mm.
Not at all.
No, there hasn't. I think the BLS jobs like it didn't move the needle a whole bunch on rates. Mm-hmm. And past it would, but I think the market's getting tired of overreacting to these BLS jobs reports that turn out to not be accurate 4 months later.
Yeah. And I mean, to Derek's point, the tariff piece, I feel like that is the one thing that people are kind of holding on to because I think these are the most tariffs that we've seen maybe ever. And so I don't think people know what's going to happen with them. And so they feel like they just need to be in a holding pattern for a little while longer to see what really is going to happen. And again, that's another thing. I don't know.
What we do know is that there's opportunity in our market.
There is opportunity. Sure. Yeah, there's opportunity. And again, this is the thing that I say all the time because I get blasted sometimes. They're like, you just need a commission check. I don't. I'm literally saying to people, if you have the opportunity to buy, it is a good time to buy. If you cannot buy right now, do not buy right now.
No, and buy the right thing. The one we were talking about earlier where you quote unquote lowball, but it wasn't a lowball. Right. I mean, you've been working with those folks since the beginning of the year. It's like, hey, they don't have to buy. It's a second home for them, right? So it's like, okay, if someone's willing to sell for a fair price, I'll help you do that.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then we won't. And that's exactly what happened yesterday.
Right. So, I mean, it's right now as a buyer, I think some of it is about patience because if a seller's been on the market for a while and you've seen some price reductions, then you can probably lean a little heavier into negotiating off the price a little bit more than if a seller's kind of sticking to their price. But again, a lot of times it comes down to me as an agent having an actual conversation with the listing agent and finding out some more information because that's usually where I get the most.
Doing their job for them and giving them the data that they didn't know how to present to their sellers that they should have probably presented upfront before they listed it for the price they listed it.
Right. So it's different. The market's different right now, for sure. But it's still plugging along. Things are still getting done. Buyers are still super happy about when they're buying. and sellers for the most part are okay when they're selling. Sometimes they're not. But I think this is what I think about sellers, because I've seen some sellers that, feel, oh my gosh, maybe I shouldn't have sold for that low. The reality is that you gotta, there's time is money. Right. And so if you're going to just keep it on the market for this extended period of time and get no offers, if you've already moved on, especially, that's when I look at them, I'm like, or an investor too, like, you're paying on this. And at what point does it no longer make sense to hold out for that number that you really want in your head? Because is that an ego thing, or is it something that you really believe that you need, that you deserve in the house?
Right. And are you buying something else because you're going to turn around and do it to the seller that they did to you as a seller?
Exactly. So Carl Roth says, yeah, the price is subject to a little bit of the past year, but the opportunity is really nice out there. Ooh, hold on. Learn how to invest your money and use the profits from your investing to pay the down payment. Agreed. Yeah. He said, if you learn how to invest in equities, you'll be far better off than worrying about whether your job will be there or not. It doesn't matter if your job is there or not, because you'll always have something. You're probably typing still. Yeah, again, I'm not here to be an investment strategist and tell you how to invest either. I just know real estate. And
same here.
Yeah, I think it's always a good investment, but I do think you have to buy smart. So, yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us and participating. It's always fun. Have a great Friday, and we'll see you next time. Matt, thanks so much for pitching in, even while you're on vacation. What a sport.
Of course. Happy to do it.
So great. All right. Thanks, guys. See you next time.